Without objection.
I ask the Speaker as of morning business.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I want to congratulate Majority Leader Reid and Minority Leader McConnell and the Banking Committee Chairman Dodd and Ranking Member Shelby for their hard work in beginning the process of trying to bring relief to families who are struggling to hold on to their homes. I think they are making a good step forward. I think we have got to do a lot more to address this very serious crisis. Mr. President, it is no secret to anyone that the middle class in this country is in great danger. It is shrinking. Some think it is on the verge of collapse. Workers today who are going to fill up their cars are paying $3.20 for a gallon of gas in the state of Vermont. There's a fear that that may go higher. People are paying higher and higher prices for food. Since President Bush has been president, some 8 million Americans have lost their health insurance. Health care costs are soaring. College education is unaffordable. And in the meantime, the wages, the real median family incomes for the average American family is going down, and the gap between the very rich and everybody else is getting wider. So we have some very, very serious problems. And among other aspects of that crisis is that the personal savings rate today is below zero, which up until 2005 hasn't happened since the Great Depression. So what's happening is that people are working longer and longer hours, their wages are going down, we're losing good-paying jobs, and they don't have enough money to survive on, so they are borrowing more and more money. And that is the reality. Now, there are a lot of, to my mind, areas that we have got to go in as a country to begin addressing the fact that poverty is going up, that the middle class is declining, that the gap between the rich and everybody else is going wider. A lot of things we have to do. But right now, as we focus on the mortgage crisis, we have got to take a hard look at interest rates in this country. And, Mr. President, I intend to be offering an amendment to the housing bill that I want to say a few words on now, and I'll speak at greater length later. This amendment would clearly not solve all of the problems facing the middle class, but it would do one very important thing, one action that is long overdue, and that is that it would stop big banks, credit card companies, payday lenders, mortgage bankers, and other lenders from ripping off American consumers by charging outrageous interest rates. I do a national radio show every Friday afternoon, and people call up. You know what they say? They say we're sick and tired of paying 20, 25, 30% interest rates when, in fact, we pay our debt on time every single month. That's what they're saying. People who are borrowing money to send their kids to college are paying outrageously high rates. And certainly we know, given the crisis that we are debating today, that mortgage interest rates are off the charts. Now, what this amendment that I will be offering would do is it would cap all interest rates at 8% above what the IRS charges income tax deadbeats. That's the formula that we are using. Currently, the IRS charges a 6% interest rate to Americans who are late on paying their income tax returns. That's what we're doing today. The IRS adjusts these rates every quarter based on the federal funds rate. If the federal funds rate rises, the interest rate that the IRS charges late filers go up. If the federal funds rate goes down, so does the interest rates that the IRS charges late filers. Mr. President, if the amendment that I am offering today were signed into law today, all interest rates in this country would be capped at 14%, including subprime mortgages, credit cards, auto loans, payday loans, and income tax refund anticipation loans. Why 14%? Why do we pick that number? It's an interesting point. Glad you asked that question, Mr. President. And here's the answer. Because 14% happens to be the same level that former Senator Al D'Amato chose when he offered an amendment in 1991 to cap credit card interest rates. Al D'Amato, senator from New York, offered that amendment. And, Mr. President, do you know what the vote was on that bipartisan amendment offered by the Republican senator from New York? That amendment passed the Senate by a vote of 74 to 19. 74 to 19, huge bipartisan vote. And among those members who are today in the Senate who co-sponsored that amendment were Senators Specter, Lieberman, and Domenici, among others. Unfortunately, that amendment ended up not being signed into law. Like my amendment, the Amato amendment was also pegged slightly above the interest rates for late income tax flyers. I have the feeling that in my career in the Senate, I will not often be quoting former Senator D'Amato. Probably won't be doing that. But let me quote what Senator D'Amato said on the Senate floor in 1991. This is what he said. Quote, 14% is certainly a reasonable rate of interest for banks to charge customers for credit card debt. It allows a comfortable profit margin, but keeps banks in line so that interest rates rise and fall with the health of the economy, end of quote. And he was then the chairman of the Banking Committee. Mr. President, I would say to my colleagues is that if the Senate in 1991 thought that interest rates should be capped, trust me, we should at least do as much today, because the problem is, in fact, much more severe. Mr. President, a recent report published by Tamara Drought, the director of the Economic Opportunity Program at Demos, found that 1/3 of all credit card holders in this country are paying interest rates above 20% and as high as 41%, more than double what they paid in interest rates in 1990. In other words, if we had a problem then, the problem today is much more severe. Between 1989 and 2006, Americans' overall credit card debt grew by 315%, from $211 billion to $876 billion. 1/3 of low and middle income families reported going into credit card debt to pay for rent, utilities, and food in 2006. Now, I don't know about Nebraska, but I will tell you that in the state of Vermont, there are a lot of people who are buying their food with credit cards. They don't have the cash. They have to go in debt to borrow food and pay for other basic necessities. All of this, high interest rates, has resulted in credit card companies earning $90.1 billion in interest in 2006 alone. Credit card companies ripping off the American people, earning huge profits. But credit card companies aren't the only ones charging outrageous interest rates. And that's why my amendment expands on the D'Amato amendment to cover all forms of loan. For example, the Center for Responsible Lending has found that some American consumers are paying interest rates for payday loans as high as 800%. And if you want to know why these outrageous levels of interest on credit cards and payday loans are relevant to the debate on foreclosures, let me just quote from 2 articles on the subject. The first is a recent Reuters article entitled "Payday Loans Exacerbate Housing Crisis." According to this article, quote, as hundreds of thousands of American homeowners fall behind on their mortgage payments, more people are turning to short-term loans with sky-high interest rates just to get by. While figures are hard to come by, evidence from nonprofit credit and mortgage counselors suggests that the number of people using these so-called payday loans is growing as the U.S. housing crisis deepens, a negative sign for economic recovery. End of quote. Second article is from a recent front-page story from USA Today. Title of the article says it all, quote, facing losses on bad loans, banks boost credit card rates, end of quote. According to the article, even as the Federal Reserve has aggressively slashed short-term interest rates, banks are raising rates on credit cards. Federal Reserve lowering, banks increasing. Mr. President, this should not happen. When the Federal Reserve has slashed the federal funds rate 5 times, from a high of 5.25% down to 2.25%, credit card interest rates should be going down, not up. Interest rates for payday loans should be going down, not up. Mortgage interest rates should be going down, not up.
Suspend for just a second. Without objection.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
But unfortunately, in many cases, interest rates for consumers are going up at the worst possible time. And one of the reasons for this is the virtual lack of regulation when it comes to interest rates. For example, credit card companies are able to raise interest rates at any time for any reason. And recently, that's exactly, for example, what the Bank of America has done. According to a recent Business Week article, and I quote, Bank of America sent letters notifying some responsible cardholders that it would more than double their rates to as high as 28% without giving an explanation for the increase. Fine print at the end of the letter advised calling an 800 number for the reasons, but consumers who called say they were unable to get a clear answer. What's striking is how arbitrary the Bank of America rate increases appear, credit industry experts say, end of quote. Mr. President, this is unacceptable. Lenders should not be able to raise interest rates at any time for any reason. There are biblical references to what can be described as usury, that when people are down and in need of money, there is a strong moral objection to charging them sky-high interest rates. In the Divine Comedy by Dante, there is reserved a special place for people who charge usurious interest rates, the inner ring of the seventh circle of hell. Well, I don't wish this on the credit card companies or the mortgage lenders, but this is what I do say. In this country today, especially as interest rates go down from the Fed, it is an outrage that millions of our fellow Americans are paying 25 or 30% interest rates. And our amendment would begin to address this issue. The time is long overdue for us to move in that direction, and I will ask at the appropriate time for the support of my colleagues. Mr. President, thank you very much.